we are back with Collins. Good morning, sir.
Morning.
Hope you had a good weekend.
I tried.
You try.
I caught a cold over the weekend.
I see that. That's what it says you tried. But it's cold season. A lot of my friends have cold.
I traveled to Kirinyaga and it was so cold.
I know. There's a lady that we normally, Stephanie, I think you know her.
Waso.
Yeah, she went to Mahimayu. She couldn't wake up this morning. Got a cold.
But the grace is sufficient.
The grace is sufficient, isn't it? All right. So the question that we're asking this morning is, what are some of the headlines that you are waking up to this economy as we speak right now? Yes, it's been the weekend, but what the markets and the economy gearing up to as we start a new week today? That's the main question that we are asking with Collins this morning. Trying to walk the screen. All right, good. Now, Collins, there's a bill to have M-Pesa, Airtel Money Services, and telcos. They want to delink money services from telco services, in this sense that if you are offering telecommunication services as a company, and we're talking about Safaricom, the telecoms, and Airtel, then you should go seek new permission from the regulator, in this sense, the Central Bank of Kenya, get a certificate, all right, of business for you to start offering money services in this country. Now, this is a bill that another one from others that are already lying in Parliament, because we do know there is another bill that has been shot down from time to time to treat Safaricom as a bank, to treat as Airtel as a bank. Now, this one again, by GEM Member Parliament, says, look, if you can't do that, then we should ask you, therefore, to go and get a certificate from the regulator, the Central Bank of Kenya, to start offering these services. The only catch point here, number one, is the only reason is the sponsor of the bill says the amendment is aimed at compelling telcos to invest in infrastructure that will guarantee quality of service to customers. As the only catch point. Weak, strong?
With regards to quality to customers, I think this is not the way to go about it.
Yes.
The way to go about it is by putting in place policies that see to it that customers have a recourse mechanism when it comes to disappointments from the telcos. But there's one point that I like about the bill is that it proposes a 10 shilling, when you have a drop call, then you're supposed to be refunded 10 shillings to every customer who undergoes that. That, to me, that goes towards speaking about quality. But with regards to separating the functions of the telco companies, I mean, the Company Act brought with it the MEMATs, Memorandum and Articles of Association, and it says that if a company lists what they're going to carry out as the course of their business, then previously used to have something called atravias, that a company cannot act with outside the borders and the confines of the parameters of what's supposed to be their functions.
Yes.
And now we are saying that before you act like that, you have to list on your MEMATs what are going to be your functions. And maybe these telcos have listed that. But equally, I agree. If you want to go outside the scope of what is your sole function, then you should get regulations for that. Case in point, imagine one day Safaricom wakes up and decides to be a food vending company, that it gives food to its customers and supplies food.
Yes.
I mean, they have to get permits to do that. And that's simply what this is seeking to do. Now, companies like Safaricom, they're in money lending services. For instance, Safaricom has a Fuliza, it has Mshwari under their belts. It does mentorship. They're in education sector. They have a school. They're in agriculture. They're in medical. They have Mtiba. And you see, there's a lot of things that now they are taking advantage of because they're a huge company and they have a pool of customers. What Honorable Elisha is trying to do is to say that if you're going to go in that route, then you need to get approvals and regulations for that. And I think it's all fine because then you're trading on legislative framework.
Yes.
Yeah, and permission.
So, other people look at it and say, oh, then what's the other side that we are not seeing? Because this company, yes, let's talk case in point, Safaricom. They've been in operation in Kenya for quite some time now. And some of the services they're offering, they recently introduced Fuliza, they have M-Pesa and all that. You know, it's financial services, but they have the capacity, they have dealt with it good to date. Why would you therefore think that now it's the time for you to get certificates from your regulator to be in the service which you've been there since time.
Is it mischievous? Maybe. what I look into it is trying to kill the monopoly of these companies, because they have the financial power, and try to empower other people who maybe want to venture into those businesses that Safaricom and other big, huge telecos have actually they have governed that area, and that's what this bill is seeking to do. That if I want to venture into money lending services, then I have to be a bank to do that.
Yes.
Not because I'm a telco and I have a lot of customers, then I think I can use them to for my benefit and give them money. It's basically trying to empower other institutions that have those functions and try to remove the monopolization of these huge telcos.
Yes.
Yeah.
All right. With that, let's just cross over to the next headline that we are waking up to this morning. All right. As we wait for the next headline. Now, this is a headline that we also now been following for quite some time now. It says job losses for civil servants in new changes. Now, yes, it is indeed true that the government has threatened now to go back and talk about reducing the wage bill. We do know that our wage bill from 2019 stood at 773 billion shillings. All right, if you look at our gross tax collection, all right, versus revenue, then we are at 53%, but we ought to be at 35%. So we are at 18% more. Now, for them, the government looks to say this. Now, we need to introduce short-term contracts for civil servants in this country, and they're going to be evaluated. Just because you work in the civil service doesn't mean that once you retire and go home, your money is going to come, or you can lose your job. Because we do know that for somebody sitting in an office, a government office somewhere, losing the job is quite a process. Yeah. Even if they stay only once they step out of law and really bad. Yeah. This time around, it's going to be good. We are going to evaluate you. Now, there's going to be a tool that is supposed to be used to evaluate civil servants in the office. For you, do you think this is a proper way to go as we talk about reducing the wage bill in the country, or is there somewhere we need to start from other than just this sport?
About reducing the wage bill, it's not a good way to go.
Yes.
But this directive is a good one. For the longest time, we've had lazy and indolent workforce that has always been at the comfort of they are assured of pensions and they are assured of tenure of their term serving as civil servants. I mean, introducing now performance contracts, I mean, it's a good way to incentivize the workforce there. That it means that if I do not show what I've done for the period of 3 years, then my contract is ending and I'm not guaranteed of pension. And equally, as I work, I'm contributing towards pension. Yes. You'll note that the pension kitty that the government has founded has a lot of money that is taking from the budget. Like has a lot of budget allocation into it. I mean, it's now about time that civil servants should equally contribute to their pensions. That as you work, you look towards your term exiting office. Equally, the civil service has been embedded with a lot of ghost workers. So this measure is going to equally weed out the ghost workers that are within that place. So I think for me, it's a good initiative. And equally, it's creating job opportunities to the youth. Because now, for the longest time, the youth have been of the idea that I cannot get myself into government offices because of the type of monopoly that has been there, because people have been there for the longest time until they are 60. That's when they can think about retiring.
Yes.
And so now it's endearing the youth that now they can apply for this job on short-term contracts and to see to it that they can grow past that. Not just to sit there for 60 years doing nothing.
And then after that, you do expect that your pension will also come later
Yeah.
on. Now, they're saying that within this tool, they're going to set targets that every civil servant has to achieve. And those who don't, now that's where the catch is, those who don't meet these targets, regardless, they have to relinquish their positions. Harsh?
It's harsh, and equally it's not harsh. Because, okay, the government, when you serve in a civil service job, I mean, what you know is that you have an objective and you're dutiful, you're a servant of the state. And so you have to work according to what the state requires you to do. But to this other end, who is going to set up the qualifications that you need, the threshold that you need to get for you to secure your job? Who is going to set it? And how are they going to set that threshold? That's a question that people should be asking. But for me, I think the best approach is for government to have a consultative forum to get stakeholders' views on this and to see to it that they come up with realistic guidelines with regards to achieving the thresholds, because there's a lot of bottlenecks with regards to what civil servants face, and you cannot be requiring them to meet certain thresholds and you've not weeded out those those bottlenecks that they are facing within the job market.
Somebody would think, look, we had to wait until the budget was read, all right? That's the 2019-2020 budget for us to realize, look, we need to find ways of reducing our expenditure if at all we're going to get close to meeting these targets that we set for ourselves for 2019-2020. Is it a reaction as opposed to being proactive?
It's a reaction, but for me, I've been of the idea that the problem is not our expenditure. The problem is how we manage our debt. That's the problem. If we have fiscal discipline, I mean, we are going to realize the wage bill is going to be cut. How we the expenditure and the revenue, they are all going to be taken care of. But we have a situation where the government keeps borrowing and keeps borrowing to repay what they've borrowed, keeps borrowing, and you don't see where they're going to spend the money that they've borrowed. That's a problem for me.
That's the problem for
That's
you.
the problem.
That's the last question I'm going to ask you on this issue. Now, the SRC, which we do know is the body that has been given the mandate to advise the government on expenditure, says, look, for the next 4-5 years, we are going to spend an extra 21 billion shillings to come up with guidelines and proper measures on exactly how the wage bill structure should be in this country. 21 billion. Should we look at that number or just close our eyes and say, good, help us?
Why should we spend for a body that has been instituted by the Constitution to do its mandate? I mean, that's where we go wrong. I mean, it's part of their functions to advise government on what we should do, not on what we should do. And for the longest time, the SRC has been coming up with proposals, but they're being shot down by Parliament. And so equally this one, in as much as it's a huge one, I mean, Parliament is still going to shut it down. The government is not sincere with regards to whether they want to fully realize functions and purposes of people, institutions that have been formed by the Constitution.
Time for us to start thinking about giving SRC more power when it comes to implementing as opposed to just suggesting and advising.
No.
Because either way, Collins, you and I know that either way, when it goes back to Parliament, when members of Parliament feel they've been hit hard, they shoot down in terms of passing these laws.
For me, I think we don't have shortage of laws. What we lack is political goodwill.
Yes.
I mean, the moment we have goodwill, I mean, all these clauses, all these beautiful articles in the Constitution are going to be realized. We are not going to sit down and say, okay, SRC are failing because they don't have enough powers. If SRC is failing, look at where the link is missing. Because we have a lot of duplication of roles that SRC today is going to say they are going to determine. The Constitution is telling them to determine salaries and remunerations of state officers. But equally in Parliament, PSC is saying the act that establishes PSC gives them powers to look at how they can discuss about remunerations of their members, and that is members of Parliament. So one day SRC is going to say, we are going to cap your salaries to this amount. But then PSC is going to equally come out and say, according to the act that establishes us, we are governed and we are given powers to determine certain allowances that are supposed to be given to members of Parliament. So there is a missing link and there's a collision of duplication of roles. And in that, as long as you're going to harmonize this act and harmonize the functions of different institutions, then we are still going to be in this dilemma of whether we ought to come up with new legislations to give more powers to bodies or not.
All right. On that note, let's just move to the next headline that Kenyans are waking up to this morning. Now, the other day we were celebrating of KQ being rewarded as a good airline within East Africa and African space, but now KQ is down in global aviation ranking. Now, Skytrax World Airline Awards have now placed KQ in the 90th position from 85th position. So things are really going downwards a year after they were last ranked in 2018. Collins, there are proposals now. The only proposal that looks to stand test now in Kenya is this proposal of nationalizing KQ. Now, the government needs to spend another 11.4 billion to acquire the 51% stake it needs to get KQ as a purely government company. Let's just be very honest. We've listened to various guys speak. We've invited guys here, even on the Smart Investor with Ali Khan Sacho, and they're saying, look, this is the only way that we see this possible. In your view, nationalizing and then turning fortunes for a company that is turning billions in losses each year. Do you think that is the right direction for this company?
For me, I think it's not the right direction. Been there, done that, burnt our fingers.
Yes.
Before 1995, KQ was fully owned by the government. And so it started realizing losses, and it was fully state-owned. It started realizing losses due to poor leadership and management. And then the government now sought to privatize it. And then they had to bring in place Financial International Corporation Act of 1995, and then a sessional paper equally was drafted to see into how it is being privatized. And so we've been there in that route. So you're not going to ask us, we've not yet learned from our failures of when we owned it as a government, now that we want to go back to that conversation. For me, for the longest time, I've been of the idea that let us give KQ tax waiver and exempt them from paying tax for, let's say, for a period of 3 years and see where they go. It's just goodwill from government. But nationalizing it is not the way to go. And equally, Michael Joseph was reluctant to admit that nationalization of KQ is the way to go.
Yes.
And so if the top management of KQ is of that idea, I mean, this is just what politicians are thinking, but they are yet to include views of other people.
But when you look at, let's just go back and really look at the problems of KQ, where they started from. But just look at the recent admission from Mikos that I can't do this anymore. I think my challenges are now, they've beaten my will to continue working on KQ. Good. Amidst all this, they're launching new lines to Europe. They're launching they want to acquire more crafts to also take the company forward. But the question should be, is this not just a management issue as opposed to just, number one, tech tax of KQ?
Not really management issue, because we've had best leaders, quote unquote, according to my view,
but they're leaving
at the helm of
yes,
KQ.
But they're leaving. Mikos was touted to be the turnaround for KQ.
And he did his best.
He did his best.
To be fair to the man.
Yes.
For me, the thing is, all these leaders who've been at the helm of KQ have been saying there's infiltration. I don't know from what quarters. We need to look at where the infiltration is coming from.
Yes.
If it's coming from the government, then we need to be clear on what's the role of the government in as far as KQ is concerned. In as much as they are shareholders in KQ, we need to be clear that if we are going to have new leaders, they should be given the freedom to really see to it that their visions are coming to fruition, but not every time changing leadership. Now, Michael Joseph is there for 3 years. In the next 2 years or so, we'll see something coming out of KQ and saying, okay, I cannot do this because of infiltration. Then we'll look at and start advertising for another managerial position, and we'll still remain in that cycle. But if we exempt them from paying taxes from 2 years and recapitalize them now and refinance them, the issue of buying new fleets is not a thing. I mean, we have a lot of fleets in KQ, in a JKA that are standing still. They're not doing anything.
Yes.
We have just one-way route to New York, and we're not even realizing any profits from that. I mean, it's beyond that for me.
It's just beyond that. It's just beyond management. It's
beyond management.
All right, take out the tax. If you look at how much KQ is supposed to pay in terms of taxes, because we do know as of 2018 they are turning in 7.5 billion in terms of losses. Is that the amount of tax that they pay? Because even if you take out that tax, yes, look, at the end of the year, you're still going to find a couple of losses again that are getting turned in. If we say, look, the merger with KA, now we turn that down, because now that's not where the conversation is going from the National Transport Authority, Committee, sorry. Okay, take it aside. Now, just let KQ operate for a year without tax. If you take out the tax they're supposed to pay, and then vis-a-vis what they're turning in, you're still going to find that they're operating in the red.
Take out the taxes, I think for the leadership, they'll see goodwill from the state.
Yes.
But equally, if you are talking about nationalization, where's the government going to get
the 11.4 billion shillings? That's the big question, isn't it?
Where's the government going to get all that money to be able to buy it? And so for me, that is the only practical solution for the moment.
For the moment.
Yeah.
Yes.
Just exempt them from paying taxes, you will empower them at that stage.
Them to
then
operate.
Equally empower the leadership. Have faith in them,
yes,
and give them freedom to do what they're there to do.
Yeah. So you like to think that probably at this time, because if you want this company now to start charting proper ways to survive, then they should have appointed a new CEO, because as we do know, Mikos is no longer. He is no longer.
Okay, it's not about always bringing people from the outside.
Yes.
I mean, and this is a frustration that a lot of officials have always felt, that every time you overlook what we've been doing for the longest time and bring someone from outside to be at the helm of this place. We've had deputies and those people around there who are locals. They could equally be promoted to that position. And we just have faith on our people for once.
All right, let's just cross over to the next headline that we're looking at this morning. Now, Collins, from the tax, from the budget that were represented to us by Rotich the other day. Now, one of the major issues was the capital gains tax in this country more than doubled. That's fine, because the justification that was given that we are factoring in inflation as per now. That's fine. That's fine. But then now people realizing that he missed one point of indexation. That at one point, therefore, when inflation is at a constant or at a certain level, as we see per the government, then the capital gains tax should be at a certain level. Meaning, now for all the sellers of property and land in Kenya, you're bound to pay the same tax, whether inflation or out of inflation. And the justification that was given to this is that we need to now go to international, to regional levels of selling property, all right, when you factor in the tax. And it's been done somewhere, that is Uganda, Tanzania, and all that. But when we look at what Tanzania and Uganda have done in this, there is the indexation clause that says, look, but should inflation hit this margin, then we expect you to pay this much. The question that I'm asking you this morning is that some questions were actually asked about this whole budget for 2019-2020. People moved to court. That didn't stop anything. The talk is cooled down. Are we starting to see the government really getting very aggressive through dubious means to fund the 2019-2020 budget? Because why would you miss out that clause?
I think the government is bitter, and it's bitter for no reason. And it shouldn't blame Kenyans for its bitterness.
Yes.
Land in Kenya is really so much overpriced for no reason. That's one thing. For me, I've always been of the idea that if you overtax, for progressive countries, they shouldn't overtax poor people for them to be able to realize their budgetary deficits. There are a lot of other ways that we can do taxation for us to realize the budgetary deficits. For instance, there is something called death tax or inheritance tax, that we are saying we are taxing property of people who've died. For instance, we had one man called Gershon Krima, the late Gershon Krima, and his estate was around 75 billion. If the government is to tax, if the government is to employ death tax on his estate, the government is going to realize 7 billion. We had equally Jenga Karume. If the government is going to realize death tax on Jenga Karume's property and estate, the government is going to realize something close to 5.3 billion.
Yes.
In a nutshell, what am I saying? In a lot of other countries, developed countries, where they've been struggling with the indexation and the capital gains is always on a immovable property, they've introduced the death tax to tax those who are dead and leave the ones who are living, the poor who are living. Tax the estate of those who've gone, so that the government can realize the gap they're finding to fill.
Well, now the question is that anybody who's going to buy land or property in just a couple of weeks or months to come, then they're going to be really very expensive. Does this therefore turn around, therefore, and bite the government back on its back, since we're talking about cheap housing and affordable housing in the country, knowing very well that some of these capital gains are going to affect the same companies who are trying to ride under that pillar for affordable housing in the country, isn't it? Yes.
The government is trying to make people shy from purchasing land, and for us now to invest and see sense in the 1.5% that is being deducted for house finance bill. That's maybe the vision of the government, but I think it's not the right way to go about it.
All right, now let's just quickly talk about the last headline that we're waking up to this morning. We remember last week universities had 2 weeks for mergers and rethinking their courses, isn't it? Now we know that they have less than 2 weeks. Some sections of chancellors in these universities have said, look, we are opposed to this. In fact, some of those sittings that we've been called to, I don't think we're going to attend. Official statistics now show that 27,000 jobs are at stake in less than 2 weeks to come. Some of them lecturers who've been lecturing or teaching in these subsidiaries of universities across the country. For you, when you look at the number, it's 27,000 jobs up for stake. Should the government consolidate further, or this is the way to go when you're talking about quality and wage bill?
The government should consult further. That's one. But that's not the way to go with regards to quality. merging universities has nothing to do with quality of education. Quality of education goes towards streamlining the courses that people are doing for them to be realistic to the job market. This was what I was saying last week here, that for the longest time we've had courses offered in universities that don't make sense to the current job market.
Yes.
For instance, and with all due respect to those people who are doing these courses, for instance, I'm doing archaeology in the universities, or archaeology, for instance. I come out of the job market now in Kenya. Where will I find a job with regards to archaeology? Maybe research. But you're churning out a lot of graduates who've studied archaeology. For me, it's streamline the courses and see to it that, okay, the government has a policy of 100% people who get from high schools to towards campuses. Where are they going to go to?
Yes.
If you're going to merge universities and say now, if you, for instance, they're saying the previous model of provinces that used to be there,
yes,
that for the 8 provinces, they're going to see to it. For instance, in Nairobi, they're going to merge MMU and cooperative universities, and all of them are going to be constituents of University of Nairobi. Same to, I don't know, in Nyanza, in Kisumu, they're going to wind up all universities in Nyanza and remain with Maseno University, and for them to be constituents. A lot of these lecturers have made SACCO remittances. What are you telling them about their contribution to the SACCOs? Now they're going to lose jobs, 9,000 lecturers. A lot of these universities have had contracts with a lot of service providers, and they've incurred a lot of debts with regards to that. How is the government going to pay back the debts that the universities have been able to incur? And how are you going to offset the bills for the service providers?
Yes.
For me, we are losing more jobs with regards to merging universities. And as much as maybe the government is really so much keen on trying to get money to finance our budget, it's not doing it in the right way. The government needs to consult widely, bring stakeholders on board, and consult and see the practical way to ensure quality education. And we have a lot of quality assurance officers under the Ministry of Education. Then the government is admitting they have not been doing the job. If merging universities is the way to go to ensure quality education in universities.
All right.
Yeah.
Thank you very much, Collins. We're just waiting to see what would happen in the education sector in just a couple days, because we don't know the 2 weeks ultimatum that the CS Magoha gave universities vice chancellors to think about mergers and consolidating their financial services in terms of getting creative of the other activities that they normally do for them to be profitable, to make proper sense. Right, a thing that we're looking at. We shall be following this headline as we go by. Business AM takes a short break. Once we come back, a conversation with Citibank CEO on the performance of the banking sector in the country next.